my guest today, Terri Cole. Welcome, Terri.
Why, thanks for having me. I'm so psyched to be here.
Thank you so much. And I'll do a little bit of important official business, and then we'll go into conversations.
Great.
So, Terri Cole is a licensed psychotherapist, global relationship and empowerment expert, and the author of Boundary Boss, the essential guide to talk true, be seen, and finally live free. And I believe this is exactly what we are seeing on your background, Terri, right?
Indeed.
So we can talk about that also. For over 2 decades, Terri has worked with a diverse group of clients that includes everyone from stay-at-home moms to celebrities and Fortune 500 CEOs. She has a gift for making complex psychological concepts accessible. I guess I have to get into the habit of talking on camera, and actionable so that clients and students achieve sustainable change. She inspires over 450,000 people, I would say 500,000, weekly through her blog, social media platforms, signature courses, and her popular podcast, The Terri Cole Show. So welcome, Terri, and welcome. And I really love the idea that you make psychological concepts easy to understand and accessible, not just acceptable. Because I think
Both.
I personally feel that, I got really interested in psychology when I discovered that my son has Asperger's, and I just started researching it. And I got so interested in psychology in general and started digging deeper and deeper. And over years, I suddenly realized this is the literacy which we are missing from academic education. And I understand in personal growth, there are a lot of fields that they think that the regular school should teach, but psychology is science. It's science, it's research-based, it's proven. And I really think this is also so important for life that we should really teach it like ABC, like mathematics in school. That's
I
my belief.
agree
Thank you for your work.
100%. Christina, I agree 100%.
So yeah, thank you for your work. And what we're going to talk today about is relationships, is setting boundaries. And I think these topics are super interesting and super important. So, I was talking about boundaries today a little bit, but maybe we'll start straight, go straight into battle and talk about boundaries. What's up with us human beings? We all have our boundaries. We don't declare them, we don't defend them, yet we collect the upsetness with the world by ignoring our boundaries. What is it? Why is it so hard to actually even start talking about your personal boundaries with the world around you?
Well, let's start with what they are, because I think
Yes.
there's a lot of confusion just right there, Christina, about what are boundaries. So according to me, your boundaries are your own, like look at it as your own personal rules of engagement. They let other people know what's okay with you and what's not okay with you. So your boundaries are comprised of your preferences, your limits, and your non-negotiables, like your deal breakers, the things you cannot have in your life or you will not tolerate in your life. But it's not enough to know them. And I think a lot of people don't even know them, but you must know them and have the ability to communicate them when you so choose. So to actually answer your question, why is it so hard? Why don't we know how to do this? Think about the way that we were raised. I mean, who here wasn't raised to be like a good kid? Be a good girl, be a good boy. Don't be a troublemaker. Don't be a big mouth. Don't stir the pot.
Don't be
Where's my
angry.
happy? Don't be angry. Oh my God, definitely don't be angry in my house for sure. But also don't, in so many cultures, it's still like kids should simply be obedient. It was never about how do you feel, right? It's about do what I want you to do, basically. So nobody was teaching us how to assert ourselves in a healthy way. At least no one that I've met so far in 25 years of being a psychotherapist has said, oh, yes, I learned this growing up, or I learned this in primary school. So think about it like a language. Healthy boundaries is like a language unto itself, that you wouldn't feel bad about yourself if you weren't fluent in a language that nobody ever taught you. You would go, oh, I need a teacher. I need to understand the basics. I need to become more fluent. First, I'll be conversational, then I'll become fluent. And I think that if we can use this mindset as it comes to personal and professional boundaries, it makes us much more likely to not feel bad, like there's some default in me that I don't know how to do this. No, you don't know how to do this literally, because not only did nobody teach you, but many of us were taught the opposite, right? We're raised and praised for being self-abandoning codependents, as I like to say, because it's true. And so that is the opposite of being able to honestly assert your boundaries. So that's my 2 cents on why we don't know how to do it.
You know, and of course, your answer has triggered so many questions in my head. Just for you guys to know, those who are attending, we are going to talk about codependent relationships. It's an interesting topic, and I think quite popular nowadays. But before I want to talk about boundaries, and contrary to the questions that I wanted to ask first, I want to ask, so when a parent, let's say, or a teacher says, don't do this in my house or in my classroom, in a way, this is their way of setting their boundary. So isn't that in a way an example? And I guess we could go a little deeper with that and talk about when boundaries clash, you know, where is your boundary? Where's the other person's boundary? Where is the healthy line between them? And, you know, which one is more important?
Well, I think that's a good question. Now, it's different. If we're talking about a power differential, right? That's one thing. So it's not going to be equal. If you have a boss who has the power to fire you and you don't like their tone of voice, you're probably not going to be having that conversation. Probably not, because the reality is that power differential will probably stop you, right? When you're 7 years old, if you don't like something that's going on in your household, you're pretty much a captive audience. It's not like you're going to like hitch your way out of there and get your own apartment at 7, because you're not. So let's talk about sort of dueling boundaries when it comes to people who are on the same power structure. So you and your partner, you and a coworker, let's see. So I'll give you a quick example because here's the thing. I understand the question, Christina, because a lot of times people will use, well, this is my boundary. But is it, or is it just a lever of trying to control the other person? And this is where we need to make the distinction. So I had a client who had her partner like to go to bed late. She liked to go to bed early. So this was like an ongoing conflict where she wanted him to come to bed early with her. And I was like, listen, you need to find a place in the middle. Let's talk about compromise. Let's talk about what it would look like if, rather than having this same conflict every night, you decide like 2 or 3 nights a week, you will compromise. And instead of going to bed at 9, you'll go to bed at 11. Your partner will compromise. Instead of going to bed at 2, he will go to bed at 11. And maybe that's when you'll fool around, have sex, talk, whatever it is. Like, it's good to go to bed a couple of nights a week together, perhaps. But she and I needed to get clear about what the actual problem was. She's like, it's not just that I want him to come to bed earlier with me. It's that when he should come to bed earlier, he shouldn't be going to bed so late. You know, that's my boundary. And then he comes in-to the room and puts on the light and wakes me up. And then he falls asleep immediately. And then I'm up for the next hour, right? So there was many things going on. So let's get clear about what's a boundary and what's someone trying to control the other person. So when she said, he should come to bed earlier, I said, who says? Because you would like him to. He is a grown man and he actually is free to go to bed anytime he likes. So you can try to compromise a few nights a week, which is what they ended up doing, 2 nights a week. I said, but that is not your boundary. That is your judgment of when he should go to bed, because you think he should come to bed when you do. Now, where the boundary came in is when he was being inconsiderate. And instead of wearing the little miner's light that she got him, like a little thing that goes right in her head so that he could get undressed and not wake her up, he was flipping on the light and acting like it was like 3 p.m. That is an actual boundary violation. You know why? Because waking her up now puts it on her side of the street. So she had every right to say, hey, I'd like to make a simple request that you actually be quiet, get it changed in the other room, and attempt to not wake me up on the nights when I go to bed before you. So I hope that that was a more clear illustration.
Yeah, it is. It is
Okay.
very clear and so logical. So thank you for this illustration. And here I think we should talk about, I want to talk about that because in personal growth, I do hear the word boundaries thrown around quite a lot. So because it is the popular topic right now among the community that is into transformation, personal growth. Yet there has to be some kind of distinction between an actual boundary and, for example, as you just said, people showing their power, or sometimes we are just rude and we say, oh, but this is this is how I am. Take me this way. How do you make a distinction between people actually defending what's important for them, what's their value, what's their core essence, versus people just being inconsiderate and rude towards other people?
Well, the way that I break it down in the book and in the courses that I teach is that not all boundary requests are created equal. So that's why it goes in a category of a preference, which is like, I prefer tea over coffee, right? This is not a must have. This is a preference, and it's still important. It's still important to share those things because this is how the people in our life will more intimately know us. But as a boundary, this is a preference. It's not the same as a must have. And then we have a desire, which is a little bit more potent than a preference. It might encompass bigger things like when I retire, I want to live somewhere warm, right? Like something that's kind of bigger and more important. And then you have deal breakers, which are the non-negotiable things. So I'll give you an example. When I was dating in New York City many years ago, I was already in recovery. And I had said to one of my friends, she was trying to, set me up with, this is long before dating apps, people. And she was trying to set me up with friends. And I said, no one in recovery, though. And she was like, why? You're judging people in recovery. You're in recovery. What's wrong with you? Type of thing. And I was like, first of all, it's my non-negotiable. And I don't necessarily need to explain it to you. I will because we're friends. But I was like, hey, for me, being with someone else who has addiction issues would be too triggering. And that is my right. Like every one of us has the right to our preferences, our limits, our desires, and our non-negotiables. But that's the way we look at it. So this helps that phrase, like, what are you going to die on this hill, right? Is that a hill you want to die on? Meaning, like, how important is this thing to you? But what's required, though, Christina, and all of you here and all of you listening to this after the fact, is that we must know ourselves before we can assert our boundaries or our preferences or our limits or our deal breakers, right? Those are the things that comprise your boundaries. But they're not just that. They're also the things that make you uniquely you. And so what I see is that people will get into this idea that, like, being easy breezy, right? Like, me, no fuss, no muss, whatever you guys want is great. Like that there's some badge of honor for having no opinion or for being so going with the flow that you don't share your preferences. But what ends up happening is that it's a way to avoid conflict, right? It's a way to avoid rejection. If no matter what the other person says, you're like, that's good, that's fine. You know me, I'm easy. But you're also denying the other person the ability to intimately or accurately know you. So I'm not sure, Christina, if I answered the question or not. I feel like I went a long way around the barn. Did I answer the question?
Part of it, and that's why
Okay.
I'm going to ask a follow-up question. But I'm sure there is also the opposite extreme. A lot of us suffer from not setting our boundaries. But is there a scenario where somebody is just too rigid with things,
Yes.
and the boundaries stop being boundaries and become some kind of unreasonable demands?
Yes, there are, because here's the thing. If we look at boundaries, you have different categories of boundaries, right? Emotional, mental, physical, sexual, material. These are all categories of boundaries. Within those categories, though, the types of boundaries, meaning the way that we can express them in a dysfunctional way is they can be too porous, which is too malleable, right? They're too easygoing, more like a chameleon or a peacekeeper type, or they can be too rigid, which is more of the my way or the highway type. And everything must be what that person wants. That again is a dysfunctional boundary style. That is not healthy. And I think that the myths around boundaries, people tend to mistake rigid boundary style, like my way, as someone who's a boundary boss. That is inaccurate, because a boss is someone who is masterful, which means that you have the ability to compromise. It means that your boundaries are healthy and somewhat flexible, not too flexible, but you have the ability. You can have a conversation with someone. If you have healthy emotional or mental boundaries, you can talk to someone who disagrees with you and not like lose your mind and not like start freaking out or screaming or crying or taking it all so personally. You're able to go, you're separate from me. I'm separate from you. Maybe we'll have to agree to disagree. But if you have disordered emotional or mental boundaries, there's a tendency to take it all so personally or to get really upset about someone disagreeing with you. So I think I answered the question that
Yes.
someone with very rigid boundaries, that is not healthy boundaries. That's just the other side of the pendulum. So you have too porous and then you have too rigid. And what we want is right in the middle, which is flexible and healthy boundaries. But you know you have a right to, if you're in the middle and you have healthy boundaries, you're aware that you are the boss of you. And that you, when you are asserting your boundaries, especially in the beginning, it's very easy to fall into this trap of feeling like we have to over-explain, right? If we're going to say no, we want to write like a friggin' dissertation about why we're saying no and why we want to justify why we're allowed to say no and it's okay for saying no. And I think that the healthier you get and the more masterful you become around your boundaries, you really realize that sometimes just friggin' not wanting to do something is really a perfectly fine reason to not do it. And to just say, I'm not feeling it. Like I'm allowed, even if the other person is going to say, well, that's really disappointing. I understand that. I see you're disappointed. And yet I still have to say no because I'm exhausted and I really need to sleep tonight. I hope it goes great. We cannot have the disease to please all the time and have healthy boundaries. They cannot coexist. They don't.
I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly, but I know that you're talking about conscious and unconscious boundaries, or maybe I misuse the words, but can you explain about that a little bit more? Why, like, what does it mean? Yeah.
Yes. Well, part of it is you have a default position, right? When we are unaware of what's happening, there's a lot that's going on in what I call the basement of your mind, which is your subconscious or your unconscious, where we have boundaries, disordered boundaries usually, that get set that are like your unconscious or your default position. So let's just say there's a conversation that you need to have, or you have an interaction with someone and they're really aggressive towards you in the interaction. You may say to yourself, well, you know, I know it's the fourth quarter and he's always really stressed in the fourth quarter. So I'm not going to say anything. I know he didn't mean it. Right. So that is, you are making an excuse, right? I call this the lies we tell ourselves to avoid hard conversations, because even if it is the fourth quarter and the person is very stressed out, that doesn't give them the right to take it out on you. They can talk to you about it. Sure. You can pick up the slack in the house for that. You know, there's many ways that we can support our partners with, or friends or whomever, without allowing bad behavior. So what we're talking about when I'm teaching you in the book and in my courses is how to bring all of these things from the basement to the main part of the house and become proactive with your boundaries, right? So much of the time we're just in a reactive situation rather than being like, oh, I always seem to have conflict with this person. Why every time when I have conflict or they say something terrible to me, am I like surprised and whatever, rather than going, I have evidence that this person is very difficult. I want to have a conversation with them. Let me make a proactive plan to put a boundary in place that if they call me a name, I'm going to get off the phone. I'm going to end the conversation. Instead of waiting to sort of be assaulted by people or to, especially the boundary bullies in your life, let's say, right? There's a way that we can become proactive. And listen, I can't tell you how they're going to respond, but you'll never know unless you actually take the risk of setting an appropriate boundary with them, you know?
So the boundary is still there, but if you're not defining it clearly, you don't know how to defend it, or how does it work? Does it
Well,
just
here's the
trigger?
thing. The boundary is not there though, right? Like you may in your mind be hurt by that person. So the need for the boundary is there.
The need is there.
Yes, but the fear a lot of times
Yeah.
is the thing that stops us. Fear of what? Rejection, fear of ridicule, fear of someone like taking revenge on us for doing it, fear of losing. We have all of this fear of losing the people in our lives. A lot of this is very primal, right? And visceral. When you think about back in the, caveman days, right? If you got kicked out of the tribe or the crew, you would most likely die quite quickly. So I think that there's a lot of unconscious and conscious fear of offending other people, of letting them know what's okay and not okay with us. But that's really our job. If we want to deepen relationships and if we want to create relationships that are safe and healthy, we need to talk about what's okay and not okay with us. Let them know. A lot of times people are just clueless. Like, I don't look at this like people are wanting to harm me necessarily, unless I have lots of evidence that this is really repeated behavior. I like to make the assumption that if that person knew how I felt about something, they might consider altering their behavior. So it's really the most loving thing to do. People fear that setting boundaries or making a simple request, right? You can make a simple request that the person let you know if they're going to be late. Let's just say like that's just a base, easy thing to think about, right? How it makes you feel if you're meeting someone and they're always 20 minutes late, right? I mean, we all have that friend. We all have that partner. We all have somebody who's always friggin' 20 minutes late. You want to like kill them if you're a timely person, or maybe you're the person who's 20 minutes late.
Yeah.
But someone in that scenario, the person who's waiting, instead of acting it out, because here's the thing, if you're a timely person and you have a relationship with someone who's always 20 minutes late, you are going to be low-key aggravated, pissed off, feel unimportant, feel marginalized. Maybe you jumped in a cab. This was always my case in life, because I was always early to things and then people would be late and I'd be so mad. I would jump in a cab because I wouldn't want to be late. And then they'd be 20 minutes late. I'm like, I could have walked here. I would have rather walked here, but I didn't, because I was considerate of you. And so that whole thing of having a conversation and what are we tolerating, right, in life that is negatively impacting our relationships? It's not just negatively impacting the way we feel about ourselves, but if we're tolerating a lot of crappy behavior and not saying anything, right, leaving the boundary need unmet, that's an issue. And those of you who are here right now, if you're like, I don't know, where do I need boundaries? I have no idea. This is confusing. Don't be confused. I can tell you right now, you can do a resentment inventory. If you had a piece of paper, you could write down the top 5 things you're feeling any resentment about for anyone in your life, small, big, anything in between. And that would tell you
Boundary needs.
Where you need a boundary, where some need of yours is not being met.
And I think that's also often the cause of passive aggressive behavior, because the boundary need is still there. I want to ask,
Yes.
it may be my personal trauma, but one reason why I sometimes avoid setting boundaries, of course, the reaction usually is that I'll just withdraw from a relationship if I don't set a
Mm-hmm.
boundary. One reason why sometimes I'm wary of that conversation is that I'm afraid of being accused of being bitchy, dramatic, intense, whatnot, when the tables turn.
Right.
Uh, how do we avoid this kind of situations, and are they to be avoided, or we have to face them as inevitable with some people?
Christina, what a good question. Well, part of it is there's no way, if you start setting boundaries in a relationship that's been established where you've had not very many boundaries, or your boundaries have been very porous, right? Remember, porous
Mhm,
to malleable. The other person is going to notice,
mhm,
right? Like, you're changing a dance. Think about our relationships as dances. And you've been doing this step, like I do this, you do that, then I do this, then you do that. This is how relationships are.
mhm,
So you're changing the dance.
mhm.
And that other person is going to be like, hello, that's not what we do.
Yeah.
I walk out of here mad, right? I leave and slam the door and you run out after me. So let's say
Mhm.
you don't run out after them. They're going to be like, the hell is going on?
Yeah.
So yes, they're going to notice. The question is, will they notice and be really upset about it? Will they notice? Of course, when we change, it doesn't mean they'll be really upset. Some people will be grateful to
Mhm.
have the information. If you say, hey, I have to tell you, when you're consistently late, it really makes me feel unimportant. So I'd like to make a simple request that you really put in an effort to be on
Mhm.
time when you're meeting me. And then if they continue to not do it, what I did with one of my friends who was just, it was insane, the amount that this person was late. I love her still, but I mean, she would leave me at a nail salon for like 2 hours. I'm like, dude, I already had a massage, a mani, a pedi, like, I don't know. Is that I stopped meeting her in public. And I was
Uh,
like, hey, I'm going to be home all day working. So
yeah.
why don't you come around 1? We'll have lunch. I would know she'd be there at like 4. Do you know what I mean?
You
But
adjust.
you, exactly. So part of it is we can choose like what we tolerate. With
Mm,
that particular friendship, the friendship was so
mm,
juicy besides that, and I
mhm,
loved her so much, I just changed the scenario so
mhm,
I wouldn't have to be resentful of her, because I don't want to be, because I loved her. So back to more specifically your question about when someone comes back to you and is like, I don't even know you anymore. I
mhm,
can't believe you're so selfish. How could
mhm,
you do that? Like, what's happening to you, type of thing.
mhm,
You can literally say, hey, I see that you're upset. And yet this is nothing personal to you. This is a boundary that I need for me.
mhm,
And so even though you're upset, I still will need this. Like, I still need this boundary, whatever it may be. If somebody owes you money or whatever. P.S.
mhm.
Don't lend anybody money, please. Just don't. It always ends badly. Just that's just a fact. Um, and so it's a little bit of both, where you said, or do we just have to face these things? Well, we do have to face being uncomfortable. And
Mhm.
what I want to say to everyone is that you are not that fragile. And hopefully neither are your relationships. It's
Mm,
like a child's fear that we have in those scenarios. And when you start to do it, you start to realize how resilient you are, and your relationships start to thrive in a different way. Because here's the problem with, if you haven't been masterful at boundaries so far, is that all you know or all you fear is what you're giving up, right? All you fear is like, I
mhm,
just want it to be smooth. I just don't want to rock the boat. I just don't want there to be any problems. But what you're giving up by staying in that position of sort of being overly accommodating, or auto accommodating, as I call it, is you're giving up being intimately and accurately known, and giving the people in your life a chance to step up for you, to be relate to you in a way that makes you actually feel loved and seen and heard and known. And when we're just going through life trying to avoid conflict or bossing people around like with rigid boundaries because we're so afraid to like let go of one iota of control, in both scenarios, what's missing is the ability for people to know us accurately, authentically, intimately, you know? And that's major. Like that's a major cost to keep the peace.
You know, I want to ask this question. Somehow happened in my head as I was listening to you. So if you are starting a new relationship and you are quite certain about your boundaries, isn't there a little bit of a danger that people who are not used to boundaries are not going to survive that kind of beginning of a relationship? How do you, like, maybe I'll bring a little bit more personal example, but I'm for example, a quite decided feminist, and I do occasionally say that, but I came back to Estonia after being abroad for a long time, and I'm a little surprised to find out that feminism rubs some people really the wrong way. So, but it is an important thing for me, and I don't want to tone down just because, maybe not tone down, but I don't want to tolerate certain behaviors just to please. So isn't there a little bit of a danger that people who do know their boundaries, who are willing to stand up for them, that they will create fewer connections than those who are more flexible?
No, I don't think so. I think that the connections you'll make, if you set boundaries early and often, when I say set boundaries, I mean, someone says they're going to call you on Friday. They don't call you on Friday, but they call you on Monday being like, what's up? So do you collude with their fake reality that they said they were calling on Friday, but they didn't? Or do you go, hey, when I didn't hear from you on Friday, I just figured you flaked out, but is everything okay? That is setting a boundary. Just saying that, acknowledging the fact that they didn't keep their word is telling them that doesn't work for you. So why would we want to attract people? So we act like it's okay that they don't keep their word. Why? How long can you do that for? You get to a point where you're like, them not keeping their word would be so annoying and so piss you off so much, you'd end up ending the relationship anyway. So my feeling is early and often with your preferences, and that's all we're talking about. I mean, listen, if there's a major thing early on in a relationship, someone tells you they're doing some criminal activity that you wouldn't want to be involved with, well, then of course you're going to have a boundary around that, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But if you from the beginning don't put up with bad behavior, don't allow, if someone says, I think feminism is crap, right? If you're dating someone, let's say, and you'd say, well, I'm definitely a feminist, so I'd love to know why you think feminism is crap. What do you know about feminism? Tell me. Right? You could have a conversation, but here's the thing. This is what we're talking about, Christina. Letting someone else's reality, their perception of reality, go above our own perception of reality. No. When it's in your life, you're the writer, director, producer, and the star of the movie of your life. So if you talk to someone else and they're like, I think feminism is stupid or whatever, do we go silent because they think it's stupid? No, because here's the thing. Do you want to be with someone who thinks feminism is stupid? No, you don't. No, you don't. And so again, it's having the courage to just tell the truth about who you are. Why does my truth need to be an affront to someone else? And if it is, they're probably not the person to be in my life. And that's okay. And then there are things that, like, you know, we've all been through, especially in the US, the political stuff, all the crap that's been going on, where many of us have extended family that have different views than we do. So for me, during that time, this is extended family that I see like twice a year. I don't need to convince you that you should get a vaccine or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not engaging. And so I just had a rule. People knew because, that my extended family was dying to engage me. And I was like, not a chance in hell. Good luck. Like, and I never did talk about it because that was my boundary. Because I was like, hey, you guys, I still want you to be in my life. And if we really get into this, that may not be the case. And we kind of laughed it off, but my power, our power is in not letting anyone else inspire us to act lower than our own integrity level. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense. And the example that you brought is actually kind of very good and very relatable. And I do have a feeling that at least when it comes to dating, there's a lot of playing cool. So a lot of the times we allow our boundaries to be ignored because we try to, especially in the very beginning of a relationship, to just be cool, not to be dramatic. But I love the concept of, why would you let some other person's perception of reality override your own reality? Okay, I think that's going to, it's not a non-negotiable boundary, but it is important that our community gets to take part. So Eva, if you have a question, please do join us. And then after that, maybe we'll talk a little bit about codependency.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
Hi.
I have a question about how to deal with a parent that doesn't want to respect your boundaries. Because I imagine when you are in a relationship with someone or it is a friend, you can always choose to go away from the relationship. But it can get a bit complicated with a parent that you don't really want to leave. So do you have any suggestions how to deal with that?
I do. Get ready to be uncomfortable, Eva. So let's start there, that as we are trying to create boundaries we're adults and with our parents, we have to see ourselves as grown up, right? And that can be difficult. Part of the thing with parents who sort of want to stay parents, it's like they never got to that next phase of development where they're relating to you as an adult child. It's almost like they still want to come over when they want, or call when they want, or want you to do what they say they're going to do, or you should do this with your money, or whatever. I don't know how they're overstepping your boundaries, but I'm sure they are. So I think part of it is you can stay lovingly attached to your parents and just say what's not working. I love you guys. I appreciate you. And I need you to call before you stop by because I'm working from home and it's really disruptive. We shouldn't have to call. We're your parents, blah, blah, blah. And then you get to a point where you have to have a boundary. I had this with one of my clients where her parents moved close to her and just were stopping over and had a key to her house. And it got to the point, and she was like, but seriously, you guys, you have to stop just coming here. Like, you can't. Oh, come on. She doesn't mean it. I can't. I dropped you bagels. What's the problem? Type of thing. She's like, P.S. I don't eat bagels and I don't want them. And I want some privacy. And she ended up changing the locks to her house. And then when they came and found it locked, she was like, texted them and said, you will now going forward, text me before you come. And I did this because I asked you 15 times and you didn't do it. And I'm grown up and it's negatively impacting my relationship with you. I love you and I'm resenting you for stopping by. And if you won't stop, I will make you stop, kind of like nicely though, because she really did love them and they got it after that. So I think it's really about you being like, what are you willing to do? But you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. And they're going to be disappointed. And the grown-up you has to go, I'm literally protecting my relationship with them. Like, I'm actually having boundaries with them is protecting my grown-up relationship with them. I'm going to be so much less resentful of them. And it's okay to just say, hey, I see that you're upset about this. And yet I still will need you to blah, blah, blah. I don't know what's gotten into you. I don't know who you've become. Mom, I'm the same. I'm just grown up. I used to say to my mother when she was intruding in my life, I mean, she got it now, but it took years. I would say, Mom, your job is done. You did a great job. I'm grown up. Please, if I do not ask you for your opinion, it means I don't want it or need it. If I'm telling you something, I need to know that you care, that I'm upset. So please, right now, I just want a compassionate ear. No solutions, please. In the beginning, she was like, oh, no. I was like, right. No solutions, because I'm not taking your advice and all you're doing is pissing me off. I'm not a problem for you to fix. That's it. You're my mother. I would just love a compassionate ear would be amazing. And she finally got it. But I was like, Mom, it's not helping. It's making you feel better and making me mad. So please stop giving me dumb advice I'm not going to take. Okay. I didn't say dumb, but in my mind, I thought dumb. Is that helpful, Ava?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks.
You're welcome. Sure.
Thank you, Eva, for joining in. And, I do want to ask, I know that you have, Terri, I'm asking Terri now. I know that you have lingo to express yourself, because I'm sure that we do all assert our boundaries, but it very often sounds like an argument or picking an argument. Where do we learn to properly communicate our boundaries? Is it in your book, or is there any other way to learn it?
Well, I mean, listen, I have a million things online as well. I have a course, but in the book, there's a whole chapter that is only scripts. The entire chapter is just scripts. So I'll give you a couple of quick boundary scripts right now that could be helpful to people. The first one, this is from Marshall Rosenberg from Nonviolent Communication. I'd like to make a simple request. Because no matter what you're asking of someone, it probably is a simple request, right? Like, I'd like to make a simple request that you let me know if you're going to be more than 15 minutes late so we don't ruin our evening by arguing. That is setting a perfectly appropriate boundary. I wanted to bring this to your attention. I wanted you to be aware of how I felt about blah, blah, blah. And I'd appreciate it if in the future you would, right? Because it's really good if you can set the person up to do it better next time, instead of just being like, I didn't like that. We're like, next time, if you would let me know you're going to be late, then it won't ruin our evening. We're staying neutral sort of when we're doing this, not really trying to not do it when we wait so long that we're so pissed off, because when we're pissed off, it ends up, this is when the person knows we're ready to fight, knows we want to fight, because we do. We're mad, right? We want them to know that we're mad, as opposed to it's hard for them to hear what we're actually saying.
So I do have so many questions, and I'm so sorry that we have so little time left, but I did promise a little bit of codependent relationships. And I do want to ask, because it's a very popular topic nowadays, I guess, and it is a fairly new terminology, fairly new. Well, maybe it has been in psychology, but in popular discourse, it's new terminology. Is it the result of our relationships changing, or is it the result of our awareness moving there, or why is it such a hot topic right now, codependent relationships? And maybe it's an unfair question. How common is that?
All right. First of all, super duper common. So common that I'm writing my next book right now about codependency. So that's how common it is. Let's talk about, I can really like sum this up in like 3 minutes. So let's do it. So codependency, codependent relationships. So according to me, it means that you are overly invested in the feeling states, the outcomes, the decisions, the circumstances, the relationships of the people in your life, to the detriment of your own internal peace, financial, physical, spiritual well-being. Make sense? So you're overly invested in what's happening, like something bad happening to your friend feels like something, suddenly it's happening to you. And again, if you're wondering, you're like, I don't know if I'm codependent. If your friend gets in touch with you and has a problem, I want you to check your urgency. Is the first thing that you want to do is you start Googling things, you're getting in touch with a friend who knows someone, you're like, I'm calling this doctor, I've got this book, you're underlining things, right? Like if you're taking it over, that is codependency. And so I created a term called high functioning codependency because my clients did not identify with this sort of old school Melody Beatty, codependent no more, have to be involved with an addict, I'm an enabler codependency, because it's so much more than that. So high functioning codependency is that you're doing all the things for all the people, but you're doing it at the expense of yourself, but you're so competent that you make it look easy. And people don't realize that it is being done to your detriment. Like you can't stop doing all the things for all the people because you are highly codependent, but you're also highly successful and effective in life, but you feel overly responsible for the people in your life, for their actions, their feelings, all of those things. So let's look at the where does codependency and boundaries go like this?
It's actually so interesting. As you were describing, I suddenly realized the boundaries of codependency, or the definition, is so much wider than like how we look at it traditionally. Yeah.
That's why I'm writing a whole friggin' book on it, because it's misunderstood.
Can I just ask one thing? I know it's a little bit of a sidetrack. I have children and they're underaged. Does that qualify as a codependent relationship if actually their problems can really make me feel miserable?
No, listen, I think motherhood, I'm a mother myself. I think that,
Mm-hmm.
listen, we have to look at what's appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, a miserable kid is going to make you feel pain, because this is what we do, right? We love them. We don't want them to be in pain. The difference between appropriate empathy and sympathy and guidance, depending on their age, and codependently taking on their problem, that's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Taking it on. They're not going to finish their report on time. So instead of letting them fail, because they should, because they didn't do the thing, you finish the report and let them hand it in, even though you did the work. That's codependency. That's inappropriate. That's unhealthy for the kid and for you, right? So emotionally, how are we ever not going to be mothers? Forget it. Like, even when they're grown, there's this, I think it's a Yiddish saying that's like, you're only ever as happy as a mother as your most unhappy child, right? Your least happy child. I don't agree with that, but I do think that it took a lot of work in my life to have healthy adult relationships with my grown children, right? Where I realized what they're going through is their life. I'm here for them. I love them. We will support them. But who am I to say what they need to learn in this life? And that's the same thing. Who are any of us to say the way that our friend needs to, what life lessons they need to learn? With codependency, it is a covert and overt bid for control of another person's situation. So we like to think of ourselves, or at least I did in my 20s, as like, I'm just loving, like Mother Teresa, When I really got down to it in therapy, I realized it's not that. It's, yes, I'm loving, that is true. But it's this person being in pain is distressing me so much that I need to fix it, but it isn't mine to fix. And again, that's all emotional boundary violations. I mean, the core of codependency, the foundation is disordered boundaries. So they really do go like this. And codependency is a natural offshoot of boundary work.
I realize that this is such a deep and cool topic, and I'm so sorry we don't have enough time for that, but a little bit that we can still cover. So in codependent relationships, is it, God, I want to go in so many directions. Like the mother Teresa also like triggered me so much, but let's stick to the relationship. In codependent relationships, is it always like the person's fault who is letting their boundaries to be ignored, or is it something where another person also allows you to do that to themselves? Or how is it?
It's a combination.
It's
a dance. It's 50-50. Any relationship, no matter who's doing what, can literally only be 50% you, 50% me. Because sometimes my 50% is just staying, even if that person is behaving badly. With codependency, we'll see a distinct over and under functioning element. So if you are a natural overfunctioner, right, a high functioning codependent, you can inspire a perfectly competent person to underfunction. Like it can happen where you just keep going. I got it. I'll do it. I got it. I'll do it. I got it. I'll do it. I got it. It's fine. It's no problem. It's fine. And the person's like, well, okay, I guess they're doing everything. So it's a dynamic between two people. Now you'll have lots of different schools of thought. You have one school of thought is that it can only be, like Ross Rosenberg talks about, it can only be between a narcissist and a codependent. That's it. I disagree. The type of codependency that I'm talking about is evident. I see it everywhere in my clients. I see it everywhere online. I see it everywhere where we are so unclear about what is my side of the street and what is the other person's side of the street? What is my responsibility and what is your responsibility? And it is so liberating when you really understand that all the burdens that you've been carrying for other people, A, they're not yours to carry. B, they don't even want you to. C, you cannot fix it for them. It was like this relief in my young life when I understood what I was doing and that I could just put it down. Because that's how you relate to people, as not projects, right? When you're highly codependent, people are projects. You can't wait to fix them. You can't wait to help them. You can't wait to make them be better. But people are not your projects, right? People are for us to have heart connections with. Equal stuff, respecting their autonomy, their ability to be sovereign. When you're a high functioning codependent, you don't. You are crossing boundaries left and right.
And here I naturally have to ask a question, because I suddenly recognized that there were situations where I was helped beyond my need for help. So let's say you're doing something and somebody comes and helps you and you feel that this is not actually helping, or this is not welcome. You can't really say, oh, please don't help me. They're like, oh no, but I'm so compassionate, I'm doing it out of love. How do you set a boundary in such situation?
I appreciate your thoughtfulness, and I don't need your help. Actually, I'd rather do this alone, but thank you so much for thinking of me. I really appreciate you. And then don't let them help you when it's not helping. But we can always start with a positive, right? We can always say, I really appreciate, Bob, that you are so thoughtful. Like, I really love that about you. And in this scenario, I do not need or want any help. I've got this, but thank you for thinking of me. Bye, Bob. I don't need you.
God, I know that I know, like, I've had in situations in life where after even setting the boundary, I was still force helped. But okay, let that be there.
I was force helped.
Well, I'm sure we all have been there. I actually
of course.
Yeah.
Of course. And it's about the other person. Again, it's not about you. It's about how they want to feel like they're so magnanimous. They helped you when you needed help, even when you didn't friggin' need help. And you didn't want it. That's a codependent right there.
So we only have, I usually finish at 55, but I'll take the last 5 minutes. Why do people actually do that? If that is, if that is to their own detriment, why do people, cross your boundaries and try to be helpful where they're not expected to be helpful?
Because it's how they identify themselves, because it makes them feel good, because it makes them feel in control, because they're compelled. Like, until you do the work, you don't even know what's driving your behavior, but you're being driven by something. Make sense? Like, you don't even know why. It is codependency itself until you bring it from the basement to the main part of the house. It's a compulsion. Like, you cannot stop yourself from doing it. I have something for you that I think is going to be really helpful to the group. So it's about boundaries and codependency. So I just want to quickly tell you where they can find it, and then you can put it in the show notes when we redo this. Hold on, let me just find the link. It is boundaryboss.me/Mind Valley.
Oh, thank you. I like it. So,
and on there, you're going to see, so that's going to be about codependency. There's a video, there's a whole thing. I think you guys are going to find it very helpful, because we didn't get to as much codependency as we wanted to. But also on that page is going to be my boundary quiz, which is just 13 questions, and it will give you your boundary archetype, which will give you a place to start, which I think can be really helpful.
And because I have to start finishing it up, I want to traditionally ask people who are right now online and people who will be listening later in recording to leave a heart for my wonderful guest, because it was a very interesting conversation. I'm sorry I didn't give enough time for people to ask your questions, because normally I let 3 people at least to come and join.
But well, we had a lot to cover.
And I have so many questions, and I still have so many questions. So I do hope we get to meet again and have another conversation. I saw a lot of yeses. I saw a lot of hearts. There's a book here. If we can maybe pin this link. I even totally broke all my own rules, and I stayed to the very last minute of our 1 hour.
Yes. And you guys give me a minute to get the thing that's live, the codependency. So when you go to that thing, you're going to see where it says Mind Valley, unless my assistant already did it. So
Terri, thank you so much for this wonderful, inspiring, interesting conversation. I do hope we meet again, and I do hope that...
Yes, closer to the book coming out. Let's meet again and talk all about high functioning codependency, shall we?
Yes, that would be amazing. And I do hope that that the teachings, the kind of teachings that you share, that they become much more mainstream, because I think we as a humanity, we need to be a little bit more clear on what's going on with us. So
I agree. Thank you, Christina. I appreciate you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone, for joining, and see you again in a week. And thank you, Bianca, for being our guardian angel as usual.
Thank you. Bye-bye.